And that threat and fear still hangs over the UK of an enemy within. This week, the US and France have specifically warned their citizens to avoid public transport and public spaces here. They say another attack is highly likely. Radicalised Muslims from across Europe are still heading to terrorist training camps to plot attacks on their own countries.
An Al-Qaeda video from earlier this summer showing German-speaking militants training for jihad in Pakistan. Another group of Germans was killed by a US drone yesterday, part of an attempt to disrupt an Al-Qaeda plot against Europe.
Among the suspected plotters were two brothers, both British, one of whom is believed to have been killed in the drone attacks. Why is it our very own citizens want to kill us? Could it be partly our own fault? The Home Secretary this week accused the previous government of being too soft on extremists.
They engaged with extremists and they failed to encourage people to integrate into and participate in our society.
But the perception of Islamophobia has made many in the Muslim community feel isolated and rejected. Many Muslims have been enraged by the deaths of fellow believers in wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. And the former head of MI5 says there is a direct link between the conflict and extremism.
Our involvement in Iraq radicalised, for want of a better word, but a whole generation of young people who saw our involvement in Iraq on top of our involvement in Afghanistan as being an attack on Islam.
But most would say acts of terrorism are inexcusable, and Britain's other minority communities have faced similar challenges without turning to terrorism. Polls have repeatedly shown a worrying level of sympathy for extremism in a small minority of the Muslim community. And there are concerns that some Muslims are too tolerant of radical views being preached in mosques, often to vulnerable young men. In order to avoid a repeat of 7/7, do we first need to ask, who is to blame for the few young British Muslims who see killing their fellow citizens as an acceptable thing to do?
What do you think? Does the blame for the outrage of Islamic terrorism lie squarely at the doors of deluded extremists? Or could we be partly to blame? If you have a webcam, go to our website now and click on the video call link. You can make your point by phone, by text, by email, or online. The details are on the screen. Ajmal, are we?
It does lie in the hands and at the doors of the deluded extremists, no doubt about it. But if the former MI5's head is, our intelligence head is anything to go by, and also some of the reports as well as the suggestions that have come from many experts is anything to go by, it has a resonance, and that is there is a systematic failure on our part to understand the impact of foreign policy, especially the misguided foreign policies. Iraq war has been a major problem, including the new leader of Labour Party acknowledging that, and problems in Afghanistan, the disproportionately, or at least our silence in what's happening in Kashmir right now, or the Palestinian-Israeli conflict for years. All of these exasperate, I believe, some of the political opinions. But can I just go back to the point that your TV program or the small clip made about Islamic terrorism? Please don't use that term. Islamic and terrorism are oxymorons. Someone who's Islamic is devout, godly.
How would you describe it?
Terrorism, criminals, idiots, that's what they are.
But they are using Islam as their justification.
Say those people who are using Islam or abusing Islam, it's not Islamic terrorism, because they are contradictory. Islam is, in my view, for example, I stood in the last parliamentary election, some of these idiots stopped me on the street and told me, why are you taking part in this election? If you take part in this election, you're participating with an un-Islamic system, and therefore you are not even a Muslim yourself. That's what they told me. Were you threatened? Many times. I received text messages on a regular basis threatening me. But what
was the nature of the threat?
Quite severe. But I tell you this, I have taken on in myself and many of my friends, and I believe majority of the Muslims across the world have taken on this task, quite hard task of saying, look, don't hijack Islam, and not in my name. You be lunatic yourself. So we need to separate them and not give them oxygen and fuel and publicity.
But do we need to understand the causes, Anne?
We are not to blame for Islamist, which is political Islam, terrorism. In fact, I think as far as we are to blame is we've been far too tolerant of these dreadful people like Abu Qatada, Abu Hamza. In fact, we slightly sort of ridiculed them as if they were little, you know, comical creatures. They weren't, and they were
You
very
think we're not
dangerous.
hard enough?
We were not hard enough on those sort of people.
What do you say to the MI6 or MI5?
Well, I
intelligence?
disagree with her. I disagree with her.
You disagree that it had
Can I
some
just
effect
say,
on
no, I can just say, Islamist terrorism was basically born in 1928 with the Muslim Brotherhood, which you know about. They spent their time, to begin with, actually killing fellow Muslims whom they didn't believe were, you know, good enough, and they bombed the cinemas and things like that. They inspired...
Oh, by the way, they were Gama Islamic, no Muslim Brotherhood.
Can I just say something
Gama
here?
Islamic, very different.
So we weren't at war in Iraq or Afghanistan when those planes were flown into the Twin Towers.
Well, exactly,
so to actually blame this, what they are is a fascist, faith-based death cult.
Yes.
And we should have no truck with them whatsoever.
Absolutely.
And when you've got people making these threats over like a few cartoons in Denmark, right, and you've got them, you know, the Mohammed cartoons, and you've got Salman Rushdie having to go and hide. We weren't in Iraq then, and we weren't in Afghanistan then. These people are absolute nut jobs.
Meanwhile,
and we should have no trust with them whatsoever.
We all agree that we are not to be blamed for it. There is a question that has been raised, which is an important one. Has any of our foreign policies contributed, even by a small amount, towards radicalizing some people?
I want to ask that question.
No, I don't think so. I don't think you're connected. I don't think you're connected on the ground to know that.
Rushdie for writing a book.
But that was not the time.
They burnt down embassies for printing cartoons of Mohammed.
Anne and Ajmal, I am going to come back to you in a moment, but there are plenty of people who want to take part in this debate. Tony Blair this week said that achieving a peace settlement would remove much of the poison which extremists use. Jonathan Hoffman joins us now, head of the Zionist Federation. Is it partly our fault that we haven't achieved that?
Well, I think no and yes. What do I mean by that? Well, as Anne Leslie said, only Islamists are to blame for the existence of terrorism. I haven't yet heard anyone say that Hitler was a freedom fighter opposing the injustices of the Treaty of Versailles. As Anne said, Islamic terror can be traced back to the Muslim Brotherhood founded in 1928. So it predates Iraq.
Yeah, but
we are to blame. We are to blame for the spread of terror, and that's because we appease Islamists instead of opposing them. For example, as Theresa May said, the Labour government had a programme called Prevent, Preventing Radical Extremism, to give it its full title. But instead of combating extremists, it actually paid them to do talks. And take Abdul Muttalib, the so-called underpants bomber, who tried to bring down a plane over Detroit on Christmas Day. He was head of the Islamic Society at University College London. 3 out of the last 4 heads of the Islamic Society have been indicted for terrorism offences. Now, the college commissioned a report on him which was published last week. It was a joke. It was pathetic. It didn't even mention any of the speakers invited by the Islamic Society while Abdul Muttalib was a student at UCL, and they were included many extremists. Dawood Abdullah, for example. Only last week, the government failed to exclude a Nigerian extremist who came to speak in London.
Okay, I understand. Jonathan, I understand your point.
On terrorism,
Jonathan is painting a very bleak picture of the Muslim community in this country.
No, he's talking about terrorists.
He's talking about the Muslim
terrorists. Will you allow me to finish my sentence? You've got this bad habit. No, you have got this bad habit of interfering in people's...
You're twisting his words.
Let me
finish
finish
my
my
sentence.
sentence.
He talks about terrorists.
Terry, will you allow me, or do you want me to just stay quiet?
Go on.
No, allow me to say what I'm saying. He's making, he's painting a very bad picture of all Muslims, almost, it seems like. That's how the perception is, and I have a valid reason to believe that. Look, as far as we're concerned, we all agree, vast majority of the Muslims that we know, 99.99% of the people of this country, Muslims or anyone else, would say the same thing, and that is terrorism is rotten. Those who justify it with anything, they're deluded. How do we deal with them? We have 2 choices: banish them, destroy them, kill them, obliterate them from the face of this earth. That's one choice. The other is win them over. If we want to win them over, we need to provide an alternative narrative. Alternative narrative must be a narrative of inclusion. Alternative narrative must be a narrative that contains equality and fairness.
Can I now say something?
Terry,
they say what their aims are a worldwide caliphate.
Ajmal finish his point.
Terry, I've not finished yet. And we need to include a narrative that is fair and just, even in our foreign policies.
Taj Haji is an imam. Taj, how hard should we be on the extremists?
I think what's important to realize that most of the mosques in this country, they are either Wahhabi or Salafi, Ikhwani or Deobandi. And your speaker himself, with this Imam, he's also representative of that kind of ideology. They believe in burqas and beards. They believe in Sharia and separation. And they don't actually say that theology is a large part of the problem. It's fine, and I reject the biased Western foreign policy, and we should say that loud and clearly. But it's also the issue of theology. We have a medieval theology that is homophobic, that is patriarchal, that's misogynist, and teaches separation and isolation. And so when we have the mosque, 2,000 up and down this country, day in, day out, week in, week out, spouting this kind of rhetoric. And this rhetoric is coming from imported imams as well as their local counterparts. So we have a real problem here, that, we have a theology made in the past, not on the Quran, made on the Hadith, made on all kinds of traditions that has no theological justification whatsoever.
And he's speaking as a Muslim.
I don't recognize what Taj is talking about, the 2,000 mosques in this country. I'm an imam. I have connections with 4 mosques where I lead Friday prayers on a rota. If you ask Taj how many people actually come to his so-called mosque, probably be no more than 10. So if we were going by numbers, as he was saying, 2,000, mosques are day in and day out preaching hate, etc. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's true. If there are a small number of people who are hell-bent in destroying our community, who have misunderstood their faith, we need to deal with them.
Terry and Anne.
Can I say briefly, we're talking theology now. I don't agree, with, let's say, the views of the Zionist who is on, i.e. in terms of his own politics. But what he's talking about is a faith-based death cult. You're talking about, I don't remember the last time a Zionist threw acid in a girl's face for not wearing a veil.
I agree with you.
I don't remember. So what we're talking about is these people, you can't actually deal with them. Their aims, Al-Qaeda, is a worldwide caliphate. They say it in black and white. We can't, to actually say, is it our fault, did we bring it on ourselves, is like us having a discussion here about battered wives and two women sitting there with their faces covered in bruises and saying, well, listen, love, don't you think you must have asked for it?
And I want to put a couple of emails on this. Roz says lots of sides contribute to the development of terrorism. So yes, we are partly responsible. However, the way forward is through talk. And the people who are chiefly responsible are those who believe that fighting is the only way. George, I am appalled at the suggestion we have in any way brought terrorism upon ourselves. And Mayank says, I don't think we should be holding ourselves responsible for Islamic fundamentalism. Religious bigotry and the terrorism that stems directly from its core texts is the issue here.
It's the worst sort of hand-wringing liberalism you can get.
Misunderstanding of the core text by people. It's not, I follow the core text. Do I look like a terrorist to you? Do I behave like this?
You're an imam, right? You're talking to a member of Al-Qaeda. He is stating that he wants a worldwide caliphate. He wants all women veiled.
Who am I talking to?
These are the Al-Qaeda people, the terrorists. So how on earth do you talk to him?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yes, Terry, we're running out of time.
Would you like me to answer that?
Ajmal,
you simply say to Al-Qaeda guy that you've misunderstood Islam completely, because God says in the Quran, if you kill one person, it is taking the life of the whole of humanity.
But these
Terry, I need to stop you there. Terry, I need to stop you there. And one very, very brief point, please.
One very brief point is that in a lot of these faith schools which are Muslim, the science teaching is ridiculous because, for example, they're told that Muhammad said that salt doesn't mix with water.
That's another...
I know, but the point... They are told
and it's not directly linked.
They have been told that.
Again, another chip shop story.
No, I've seen it.
There we can... And we can continue that debate on our website. We have to end it there because the result of our text poll is in. You've been voting while we have been on air. We asked, should we still pay people